thing. All right, you guys. So welcome to ecological restoration. Super cool. Super stoked you guys are taking this class. This is great. We'll talk about the history of this class in a little bit, but I'm glad you guys are interested in ecological restoration. I've been interested in it for a long time. We'll just start to scratch the surface today, then we'll spend the rest of the semester sort of going over stuff. So we're obviously meeting this morning. Thanks for filling out that poll. I'll take a look at it when I do my sort of finalizing plans this weekend. But hopefully you guys don't have a class before this class, because it'd be great for at least a few times to get out in the field a little bit, and it'd be nice instead of you guys having to come to campus and then go somewhere else if we could do that. But unlike many of my other classes, this class is primarily a sitting inside class, because it was the guy that designed it. I don't know who the hell that guy was, but the guy that designed it this was sort of the concept class. The next in our series is the design and construction class, where we actually spend most of that class outside, looking at sites, seeing how things are put together, learning how you put down jute net, all that kind of stuff. And then the third course in this cycle, we were so small when I created these courses that Dr. Rodriguez and I were saying, oh man, there's no way. I mean, as it was, we could barely teach the classes we had. So we turned the third phase of this restoration cycle, which was the restoration assessment class, into just our field methods class. So you guys, many of you have taken our field methods class. That's essentially a lot of those techniques we just use for restoration and vice versa. So obviously you guys don't need to continue on in the series, but if you are interested, it would be great to do another design and construction class. But this class is really meant to be a standalone class, and that you guys don't need to continue on. And so this is really the concept thing. So we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff. Yeah, Andy? We're planning next semester. We're planning next semester right now, so we haven't decided. So if maybe let me know today or next week if you guys are interested. We could talk about adding it in. It's just a matter of if there's demand. We're starting to have so many students now that if there's enough people to fill that class, we could totally do it. Yeah, it's So the reason why I typically teach this in the fall is so that we can do that in the spring. So yeah, that'd be great. Again, if you're in some other classes, just a quick note here that my office hours change a little bit from the office hours I gave out earlier in the week, but basically it's Monday afternoon in my office, Wednesday afternoon in my office. Those are my official office hours, and you guys are of course welcome to come to any of those or make an appointment if any of my times are not convenient or don't work out for you. Those are my official office hour times. So that means we can sit in my office and talk. If there's something, you're worried about, grades or something that's sensitive, we can talk there, no problem. I also have my so-called unofficial office hours, which this semester are basically Wednesday lunch, essentially early lunch, because I teach in the afternoons. But either at Tortillas or Pizza 314, you guys can come out. Same thing, still there for you guys. Even if I'm sitting there alone typing on my computer, I'm waiting for you. So by all means, come on up, talk to me. Let's talk about stuff. Let's answer some questions. I just call it unofficial office hours because when there's beer there, and I won't be drinking beer with you guys. But also it's not it's in the restaurant area. I can't guarantee privacy if we wanted to have one of those kind of conversations about grades or what have you. So by all means, you can come up there and say, hey, can we meet next week to talk about this? That's totally cool. But I'm not trying to say you guys have to air out whatever you want out in front of Tortillas or whatever. But so we have official office hours, unofficial office hours. For most of what you guys want to talk to me about, there's no difference. You guys just come on up. For those, I don't know everybody in this class. I know a lot of you, but not everybody. So if you guys don't know where my office is, this is Sierra Hall. This is where our research and teaching spaces primarily are located these days. But my office is in Bell Tower West, and it's on the first floor, Bell Tower West. And if you walk past the Xerox room, the copy room with the mailboxes, my office is just westward of that, just this side of that room. And people can tell you about how messy my office is. It's a legendarily difficult place to walk through without snapping your ankle. So by all means, do reach out to me when you guys have questions or need things answered. Send me an email, absolutely. But just please know I get hundreds of emails a day, and it's really hard for me to get through all my emails, and I can never ever seem to. I before I walked over here, I was like, I'm gonna get through emails, and I got through about 50 emails, and then we're sitting here now. There's another like 30 emails in there, so I just there's no way to keep up. So don't not email me, but what I ask you, if it's important or time critical, do that, and then send me a little text and say, hey, Dr. A, I really need to turn this thing on Monday, and I'm not sure what you want, right? That kind of thing. Send me a text, and I know to go hunt down your email. And since I might not know what your email or your cell phone number is, just sort of say, hey, say your name, and I just sent you an email at 2 o'clock or whatever, and I'll go run it down. And then, of course, you guys can always call me on my cell phone, and cell phone's really the best way to reach me. My office phone forwards to my cell phone, but I'm just so in the field and around that cell phone's the best way to catch me if you guys need to catch me. Great. Do I want to say any other general introductory things? So yeah, let me say a couple general introductory things before we start going through the syllabus. The first is that this class is really, as I mentioned before when I talked about the concept of it, this is really designed to give you guys the foundational understanding of ecological restoration. Ecological restoration is a growing field every year, more and more and more and more and more. But not all restoration ecologists are created equal, and not all ecosystems that are in the process of being restored or people would like to be restored are equal. And for some reasons we'll go into in the next couple weeks as we start getting into this, wetlands, we're much more advanced with our approach to restoring wetlands than we are to many other ecosystems. And so for that reason, we'll tend to focus on wetland. That's why I asked you guys that survey. I'm going to go look through your answers as to what you guys are interested in. We'll talk about various things. I'll try to cover, a little bit of fire ecology and this and that and all that good stuff. But the most sophisticated theory, the longest approach to exploring ecological or restoration success, all that kind of stuff, really wetlands are the mothership. And that's because in the U.S., we had this thing called the Clean Water Act and Section 404 and some other legal tools that basically said if you screw with a wetland, you have to pay a price. We don't have such laws with regards to forests generally, with regards to with regards to grasslands, with regards to coral reefs. There are things here and there, but we've had the longest consistent protections for wetlands. So because of that, people have been thinking more methodically and rigorously about how we go about fixing wetlands. And so because of that, we'll focus a lot on wetlands and streams and stuff like that in this class, just because of that greater and deeper history with ecology. So we'll talk a lot about that, but a lot of these concepts should apply in general, should apply to a grassland or a forest or what have you. All right, cool. I have a bunch of quotes. You guys can read these when you have a chance. I want you to read these. But they're all, I'd like you to read through them, and then as we go through the semester, we'll return to these and see if we have, reading them, you probably guys have some insights right now. But as we go on and start to read things and see projects, I'm hoping you'll see additional insights or motivations for why folks said what they said. We'll just start out really quickly with this one here, which is this phrase that I like a lot, which is can you guys see that? Is that too small? Let me make it bigger on the screen for you. Hold on. Sorry. Is that a little better? And so I should have said this if I haven't. Actually, yeah, let's pause right now just so you guys are all on the same page. So if we go to our Blackboard site, our CI Learn site, so all this stuff is in the syllabus bin. And then we have e-reserves, which are weekly readings. We'll talk about those in a little bit. And then we have, so I'm recording this right now. One of your colleagues is away at a wedding. So we'll have these, so you guys can always review back for our lectures if you want to, go check your notes or what have you. And then I have other recordings from previous semesters and other things, other videos I'll link to. So all that stuff you'll be able to link through in here. I used to put a lot of the stuff up on iTunes U, But starting a couple years ago, you guys seem to not be too enamored of that, and everybody seems to like YouTube. So I've switched to basically putting all these things up on YouTube, so you guys don't have to be in Blackboard. You don't have to be worried about typing in your code or what have you. And so they're there for you. But if tastes are changing, let me know, and we can put it on other platforms or whatever. The goal is to make these things as easily accessible to you as possible. We have some things here about we start getting activities and such that'll be in there, and that's the main stuff for us. These top few buttons. But if you go into syllabus, so here we go. So the syllabus here, and this is the reading schedule. So what I've been doing. I just printed out the first couple pages. The whole thing is there, so you guys are welcome to click it open if you want, or I'm just going to scroll through it. So either way. But in any event, so getting onto that first page, this notion of application clarifies importance. We here at CSUCI, especially in the ESRM program, we're very applied focused. We're very much like, here's a problem. Let's see if we can solve this problem. Let's go forward. And that comes from myself and some of our other colleagues that think that's an important thing to do. It's important for you guys to understand that historically, ecological restoration is the sort of viewed as, I don't know what the term would be, maybe the toilet or something like that of ecology and field science. A lot of people traditionally have drawn a distinction between what we might call basic science or quote unquote pure science or, theoretical science kind of stuff, and applied, and the application of that theory or that model or that finding to the actual manipulation of the active manipulation of stuff in the world, fish populations, deer populations, something like that. And so I came up from, I'll tell you guys my story in a bit, but I came up from a research university background, and it was very clear that while our professors wouldn't say the guy that went to work for Fish and Wildlife Service was bad, they'd never talk about him or her as like their golden child, right? The golden children are always the ones that went on to do pure basic research. And the theory or the thinking, and that still exists in a lot of big research places, that there's this somehow distinction between these things, which I've never really understood. But that is starting to fall by the wayside, and people are starting to see the value in more of an applied focus. And so because of that, restoration ecology has in recent years suddenly started to gain some traction in our research universities. And suddenly these guys have discovered that restoration is an important thing. And the reason is, in just a three words, application clarifies importance. So if we truly understood the ecosystem of the forest, right? If we really, really understood how that tree interacts with that water droplet that interacts with that microbe that interacts with that bunny and all that kind of stuff, right? If we really understood that and we came upon a site that was messed up because of pollution or fragmentation or whatever, we could just put it back together again, right? If we know how the Lego blocks go together, just click them together, right? Funny, we can't do that. We can't make it just instantly go back to the way it was before the disturbance. So that should tell us that our basic understanding, our theoretical understanding of these systems is not complete, right? So rather than this historic separation between restoration ecology, say, and more traditional ecology, what's been going on the last few years is people have started to realize that actually this is the acid, I have another phrase, this is an acid test, right? So we have this great theory, and hey, does that work? Let's go see if we can use it in a restoration. And if it does work, then that's great. We do understand that aspect of the system. And if it doesn't, we need to go back and revisit our theory. So the best is to use both these tools, to not be in one or other of these camps exclusively. So action clarifies importance, and a lot of things that go on. This is a big one, this one here. So this guy, or this quote, is from Jane Lubchenco when she was still at Oregon. She's still at Oregon State, but before she became a big power broker and migrated on up the Washington D.C. ladder. I guess this was actually just when she was entering the Washington D.C. ladder. But in any event, this notion that just because we did something in the past, that's how it should go in the future. So right now, Louisiana is flooded, or, well, drying out from some floods. 8 storms in the last 13 months or so. 8 storms hit Louisiana at what the National Weather Service was calling a 500-year event, meaning this would only happen on average once every 500 years. So eight storms in a year, that doesn't exactly sound like once every 500 years. Indeed, one of the stations 2 weeks ago recorded 32 inches of rain in 48 hours. That's a 1,000-year event by the models. So if you're having 8 things that you're predicted to have happen only once every, half a millennia, and even more, that tells us maybe that our past experience is maybe not always the best guide. And so those numbers come from folks looking at rainfall data from, say, World War II to, depends on what they're doing, but say World War II to 1990 or something like that. So, okay, on average, this is what we saw. And that's a normal, natural human thing to do, right? It's let's take this experience and then we're going to extrapolate it forward. That if I come in Tuesday at 9 a.m., I'll be able to find a parking spot. Why? Because last semester I came and Tuesday at 9 a.m. was fine. Now I'm screwed, right? So there's another thing we'll talk a whole lot about in this class are assumptions and the importance of being really explicit about your assumptions. So it's okay if that's what you think is going on, but you shouldn't fool anyone. You should say, hey, I'm going to assume that the parking situation this semester is going to be just like last semester. Therefore, I should be able to park at 9 a.m. or whatever. And so so that notion that we can't just use we can't necessarily just rely on the way the past was or things that worked in the past, that's really key. That's especially in this era of climate change. Another thing we'll spend some amount of time talking about is this so-called field of dreams hypothesis, which I used to just say that and everybody know it. Do you guys know what that movie's from? So who knows what If You Build It, They Will Come, what movie that's from? One. Yeah, see? God damn, I'm getting old. So that was a Kevin Costner movie. What was it? Field of Dreams. That's right, Field of Dreams. So it's I don't want to spoil the movie for you, but this guy's out in Iowa and he starts hearing voices and he builds a baseball field in his farm on his crops, and everybody's saying, "What the hell are you doing, man?" And he keeps this notion that if I build it, they'll come. And I don't want to spoil the movie, but that really is a key part of restoration theory and has been a huge part for a long time. Oftentimes not. Again, another one of these assumptions that's not examined. So the notion is, hey, if we put a river here, hey, if we put a bunch of plants here, the butterflies will come or the fish will come, just by the fact that we do it. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it doesn't happen. And so so that's another theme we'll be returning to as we go throughout the semester. And there's other things here. This is one of my favorite ones. This is from so I'll just read it. So restoring grizzly bears to this particular wilderness in the West. Restoring grizzly bears to the Selway Bitterroot Wilderness is like introducing sharks at the beach. Which to me, I'm like, that's cool, right? Sharks at the beach. That was meant to be a slander, right? This was testimony from a legislator who's saying how stupid this is. Why would you ever want to introduce predators, right? Well, maybe because predators are part of a functioning, healthy ecosystem, but that's another story. So this notion that restoration is not kumbaya, right? There's a lot of people that have very explicit and implicit notions of what is right and wrong and what is desirous and not desirous, and increasingly with the kinds of restorations we're realizing we need to do, we're more kind of getting up in people's faces, and it's more about stakeholder involvement and making sure everybody's on the same page and all this and that. So I like that quote a lot. This is a follow-on, same thing. So this is from a project we were doing down in Los Angeles, and this person came up, and here, was I talking? I can't remember. I think I was talking, and I'd shown all these pictures. And this was a weedy area full of non-native, I think radish mostly in this area. And I wanted to take it out and put in pickleweed, salt marsh, the common sort of main backbone of a lot of our Southern California estuaries plant. And so this guy, which is all green. It has flowers, but the flowers are about the size of a little teeny tiny needle tip, right? The little teeny white things. And so this guy walks up and says, so a lot of marshes are kind of stinky places. This place is alive with weeds and their color. What will the public think when they just see a sea of green? Meaning he really liked the radishes because they were like sometimes yellow and sometimes purple. And I wanted to go in and put this like pure green thing that was like really boring, right? Like, well, you're so stupid. What are you thinking, right? So again, that notion of priorities and what is valued and what is the desirous target at the end of these manipulations, we'll be talking about that kind of stuff. So this is one of the fathers of modern wetland restoration, and he's basically saying that I should just read these. I shouldn't tell you guys. So what we have are designer wetlands. This isn't restoration. This is gardening or zookeeping, meaning that a lot of our initial restorations were very much let's pick out this piece, drop it in, boink, and let's pick out this piece, boink, drop it in, and there we go, right? Like a rose garden in a French countryside or something. As opposed to something that's tangled and messy and has wilderness and has dynamic things fluctuating up and down, that kind of stuff. Okay. I can't tell you who said that next quote, but same idea. I'll let you guys read all these, but this one I want to focus on here. So this is a professor from Scripps who was a a geologist that studied old coral reefs, and then in recent years, now that he sort of got famous and everything, then he started getting interested in applied things, and so then he started writing all these great papers, and so. He's old and cranky, and so he just likes to say things to piss people off. And so this is a direct quote. He said, here's some stuff to piss out almost everybody. 3 facts and an opinion. 1, hunting and gathering does more than remove target species. 2, we cannot study these changes in real time as no wilderness remains. 3, it will be much more difficult to go back from whence we came. And lastly, an opinion, we need to intervene on a massive scale. But we don't know how to put things back together. We need to start accepting that the train left the station a long, long time ago, and the tracks have been burning behind that train ever since. So the more I work on these problems, the more that last phrase is really, really true. So we need to figure out how to do large-scale restoration and do it a lot. So this one group I'm working with, we're talking about trying to, farm the ocean with kelp and all kinds of crazy stuff. And back in the day when I was your guys' age, I was like, that's crazy. Like, nobody's ever going to do that, and that's like too expensive, and who would approve that? That's the scale at which we've historically thought about restoration as something in the size of this room, something in the size of this building, something in the size of this part of campus. Increasingly, we need to go big and really big. And it's scary because we don't fully know how. But it's quite clear that with issues like climate change and massive growth in the human population, we need some major stuff going on, and that's scary. And so we'll talk about that too as we go on. And so then this is a great movie. Do you guys know this movie? God, I'm quoting movies today. Do you guys know Big Trouble in Little China? Oh man, you guys got to go watch that. It's very funny. This is this sort of anti-hero guy, and he says, hey, I'm a reasonable guy, but I've just experienced some very unreasonable things. So I feel that most of the time when I'm working on restoration stuff, and when we talk about what happened with Malibu and all these various things, you'll see some of these crazy things that have happened. Okay, and then maybe we'll just end with this BP quote, which is, this is in the wake of the Deepwater Horizon oiling going on along the Gulf Coast. And this is the then head of British Petroleum, who came under a lot of fire for some of the things that he said in the midst of the crisis. But at the end, at one point, he says, yeah, we'll fix it. I guarantee it. The only question is we don't know when, right? So could be a year from now, could be 30 years from now, could be 500 years from now, but don't you worry about it, we'll fix it, right? And in some senses, that's a very real statement. That's a very honest statement, right? But in this context, it was pretty much taken as don't you worry about it. Just let us drive the train, and we'll go forward. So one of the things that is very frustrating to me is one term that has crept into popular usage is natural restoration. Have you guys heard that term, natural restoration? So what that basically means is don't do anything. Don't do anything. So we could come in and drive bulldozers and plant plants and do all this cool stuff, and that would be great. But that's like human, that's artificial, that's like manipulative. What if we just chill out and let like the rain and the deer and the whatever come on in and tweak it up? And that's natural, right? That's natural. And so while in some cases that's the right thing to do, in some cases that is the most beneficial thing we can do. But increasingly, I see that coming from folks such as this gentleman that don't want to spend money and time and just want to call it, well, we'll do it, which means doing nothing. But by slapping the term natural restoration on it, it sounds somehow kind of, it's a marketing term kind of thing. So, okay. All right. So I'd like you guys to read over the full syllabus, but I want to just hit the key parts here before we go on. So, I'll just read this first introduction paragraph. So while we'll cover the restoration of numerous ecosystems this semester, our attention will largely focus upon the restoration of wetlands. Wetlands, especially those in the coastal zone, provide a multitude of ecological functions and values to society. Despite being habitat for endangered species, nursery grounds for economically valuable fishery species, buffers between ocean storms and low-lying coastal developments, water filters, and on and on and on, all these great things. The amount of wetlands is going down all the time across the planet. Louisiana leads the nation in the gross amount of wetlands lost any per unit time for the last 150 years or the last year, whatever you want to pick. California, we have the unfortunate distinction of, over the last 150 years, having the greatest proportional loss, so the greatest percentage of stuff that used to be here versus now. So California leads the nation in proportional wetland loss, with Ventura County having lost almost 60%, 56%, and Los Angeles County 87% of just the coastal wetland area that existed essentially when we became a United States territory. Current state and federal laws require mitigation for all current and future losses of wetland communities. We touched on that. That's why wetlands. That's why we're going to focus on wetlands, because of these issues. No other widely distributed ecosystem has such legal protections mandating restoration following impacts. Wetland mitigation consists of creating new wetlands from scratch or rehabilitating existing but degraded areas so that we can experience the so-called no net loss, in quotes, I put it there, of extant wetlands. So that sounds great. We just don't seem to exactly know how to do it all the time. So we're going to cover a lot of this stuff. So we're going to focus on the ecological aspect of the restoration, but we will touch on these other things that come into play, like the bureaucracies, like the perception of non-native species and that kind of stuff. We're going to go over all this kind of stuff. You guys should, by the end of this class, you should be able to articulate, why we might need to do a restoration in a particular place. And then when we were to sort of take an approach, why we were taking that approach. What's the rationale behind doing X versus doing Y? Some core restoration theory, like the field of dreams hypothesis, that kind of stuff. And then various case studies, stuff that we'll see ourselves here in Ventura or LA or Santa Barbara County, and then stuff that we read about from elsewhere. And we'll talk a bit about what restoration success means and how do we measure performance. And then again, some of these larger issues like public perception, et cetera, of restoration ecology. And then as we do this, you guys are going to be reading scientific papers. You guys, even if you haven't read a lot of scientific papers yet, you guys will be reading more. And so you guys get more comfortable with that. How do we interpret results? All that good stuff. So the main stuff we have for our readings are in our e-reserve section. And so that's in our... I'm probably going to update that list. So the first couple weeks are solid, but the next couple weeks probably going to be updating stuff with a few more current examples. Because I was looking through that this weekend, and or last weekend, I thought, those are kind of old. I should put some new stuff in there. But in any event, they'll all be in the e-reserve section. All those additional readings. Then we have, as you guys held up before, or you guys were asking about. So this is our core. This is a great book. This came out a few years ago, but this is essentially for you guys. This is for folks that are starting to learn about ecological restoration, and what are the core concepts that we're talking about. So we won't read the whole book. It'd be great if you guys want to read the whole book, but this will just be sort of pulling out excerpts here and there, this chapter, that chapter. And so this is edited by a couple different people. Falk is one of the persons, so we might just call it the Falk et al. Book. And then this is an optional thing, but for those of you guys that haven't done a lot of writing, those of you that had me in other classes, you do a good amount of writing, but if you haven't had me, that's all good. This is a nice little cheap book, and usually they have them used for like $4 or something, so just a little sort of not exactly a pocket guide, but a small book that's nice just to look up. How do I reference that, or how do I do this or that? So that's elements of technical writing. Okay. So there's some stuff about how to succeed. The basic thing is this is just come to class, do your work, we're all good, but do show up. That's the most important thing, and do put your time in. We will be doing a fair amount of discussion in here. So the key part of that is you guys got to do the readings ahead of time. So obviously not this week, but starting next week, for week 2, like you guys have all the stuff read. Well, this class is on Friday, so it kind of makes sense. But right, so you have to by Friday everything should be read, right? So do sort of get on that, and that'll be key, as we'll talk about in a second. I encourage you guys to do active note taking. I don't typically give out any handouts or anything like that of my lectures, but all of these lectures, or at least almost all of them, will be up online. And so you guys can go back and review and look at that diagram, freeze it, and double check what's going on, and all that good stuff. I sometimes go a little fast if we have a lot of stuff to get through. You guys, but we don't have to go fast, right? So you guys, I know I'm spitting out all these facts right now, but you guys should interrupt me whenever we start getting into actual stuff, and you will not be rude or anything like that. So as we're going on and talking about stuff, you guys pause the conversation, ask me if I said something too fast or it's too confusing. Happy to pause and go back or re-explain stuff. Generally speaking, unless we suggest something different, which we might, and we'll talk about that in a second, when you guys can do a weekly reading summary from some of the stuff we do, and that turned in is to give me the printed version of that piece of paper. Breakdown of grades. You guys can look over that. So these guys say midterms. So our midterms are take-home midterms. And our midterms in this class are wetland assessments. So we'll go, not the first couple weeks, but after the first couple weeks, we'll start going over what we mean by these things. And the idea is you guys are going to do a wetland assessment for your midterm, right? So it's take home. So it'll be due on a certain date. I'll give it to you probably a week ahead of time. And so we don't have in-class tests per se in this class. What we do have weekly, after this week, we'll have weekly quizzes. And I experimented last time I taught this class with this group thing. So we might actually do a quiz where I just give everybody a quiz, or we might break up into those groups. So later on down, you guys saw I have you guys broken into groups. And so in that case, if we do those things, you guys are going to get into your groups with your whatever it is, 2 buds or whatever it is, and you guys are going to have a couple minutes to summarize something we've gone over, typically like the Falk book, right? And so you guys can use each other, bounce off each other, right? You can use your notes, all this and that. So you're going to kind of come together, pull up the key points or whatever I asked you about them. And you can do that. And then you're going to come together. And after you got your ideas for a few minutes, then you're going to kind of say, this was the most important point. Because one thing I've noticed is you guys are okay with recalling, but sometimes you guys just barf it back and you don't really sort of digest it. So the purpose of this activity is to make sure you guys are both recalling it and have at least a little bit of debate. Are all these things equal? Or actually, this was the best example of that. This was a really cool example. These other things they're okay, but they're not as good as that. So it's more of a group way to do a review. And you'll see how we do that when we do the first one. And then this is the one thing that I need to get a sense from you guys. So we also in this class, I have you guys lead of one of the particular papers we have, lead a discussion about it. So recap. So everybody will have read it by the time you guys go to present it, but you'll recap. But it might have been a couple weeks ago. So you'll recap it, brief recap, oral presentation. So this is blah, blah, blah study. They looked at X, they found Y, and it was cool because Z, and then sort of take us on a little bit of a 10-minute discussion about that. So, the study seemed pretty lame. It didn't really seem, it seemed to be very different from our other studies or what have you. We'll have a conversation about that. The issue is, so when I first created this class, we had 6 students in it, and then it got to be like 8, and then it was 10, and there was 12, and that was still okay. But now that we're pushing 20, it's getting a bit more challenging to do those things in terms of giving enough people, and we always seem to run out of time now. So I might try migrating those online. So I'm still sussing that out. I wanted to see exactly how many people showed up here the first day. But we might try doing some of those presentations online with VoiceThread or something like that, so that we don't run out of time here in class. But there will be a component where you guys will essentially be the experts on a given paper, and you're going to kind of summarize it for us and lead us in a discussion, whether that's virtually or here in front of class. Okay? We will be doing some field trips, at least a couple. So when we do field trips, you guys should be good to go. Closed-toed shoes, water, hat, sunscreen, all that kind of good stuff. So I believe everywhere we'll go should be fine to take photos. One of the places I'd like to take us, but I just want to know if anybody isn't a U.S. citizen, you guys can send me an email after class, because to go to Magoo, that's a requirement. It didn't always used to be, but after 9/11, it became that way. So we have some great, really close by restorations I'd like to show you that I started doing many years ago. And so it'd be great if we can go there. But if everybody can't go, it's not a huge deal. There's lots of others we can go to. But before I talk with those guys, I have to be assured that everybody is a U.S. citizen or from a U.S. ally. One time I had this lady from Ukraine, and they wouldn't. It was crazy. So field trips. So great. So I'll give you guys lots of notice for those. We talked about the in-class discussion. This is just a little bit more about this. We'll sort of put this on pause until I have another week here to really get a sense of if this is going to work. But again, you guys are going to have one of the papers we've all read, and you're going to find some additional references that we've not read to kind of supplement your points, and you're basically going to recapsulize those arguments that they've made in that paper and lead us in a discussion about whatever it is, invasive species or whatever. This is the rubric that you guys use to evaluate the speaker when he or she gives a presentation up here. So I might have to modify this a little bit if we do it virtually, but these are the kind of things I'm looking for. And you can use this as a guide when it comes to your guys' presentation. Hey, did I clearly state my hypothesis? Did I give some background information? All that kind of stuff. So you can look over that when the time comes. And then reading summaries. So every week, you guys, except for this week, not this week, but after this week, you guys will have a reading summary due. And so for your reading summary, we'll have sometimes one, but a lot of times we'll have several papers in the e-reserves. You just pick whichever one you're interested in. So you need not do all 2 or 3 or 4 of them. You just pick whichever one seems the most interesting to you. And so what you're going to do is you can do a 1-page summary. It's just going to have, obviously your name and everything, the title of the paper on it, and then the central hypothesis. So what's the core main thing they're trying to test? Every once in a while, we might have a profile of a wetland or something of that nature, in which case it's not exactly a test. That would be the central thesis of the paper then, or of the article. 1 page, right? So we're basically talking about 1 paragraph and then another paragraph. That first paragraph is going to be a factual summary of the content of that paper. It's a little short version of the abstract of the stuff most relevant to restoration ecology, if there's things that touch on things other than restoration ecology. And then your own interpretation. So, wow, this was a great paper. This really made me think about X, and this reminded me of this other thing we read, and that kind of jazz. So then I want to hear that you guys have done some reflection on that result of those thoughts. and then finish it up with, and so this is full, well done, and printed correctly and proper grammar. This part down here can just be bullet points. Sentence fragments are okay. So this other part is you're going to give me 2 or 3 good things about the paper, 2 or 3 bad things. Every paper has something good about it. Every paper has something that can be improved about it. So, it could be about the graphics. It could be about their overall approach to the hypothesis, whatever. And so, if you guys get in this habit of doing this every time you read something, take a pause. So what did it factually say? Okay, good. They did that. Got it. And then think about it for a couple minutes, right? So this, it's been years and years, but let me think about this. Okay, this reminds me of this and that. This actually is a great exercise, mental exercise to get you guys into for processing information as you guys go on in your career. Okay, talked about that. Talked about the round. Okay, so yes, when we do that round robin thing, here are your guys' assigned groups. And I know not everybody's in there yet, so I'll do a revised version of this so that everybody's in here. Talked about our wetland characterization. Submit your work. Don't cheat. That'd be horrible. Some examples for referencing. Disability accommodation services. If you guys need any help, go check them out. Also, we have more and more students that need assistance with stuff, which is great because that means that you guys have more opportunities to make money. So I would strongly encourage you guys all, whether you need disability accommodation services or not, go over and just register with them. Tell them what your schedule is. And they oftentimes need note takers in classes, and they pay you, $150 or something like that for 100. Okay, so 100. Not 150, but 100. But still, that's awesome, right? You guys are doing it anyway, right? You're taking notes anyway, and it's a great way to, review and practice, make some really nice kick butt notes, and then you get another. I don't know. You get that buys like what, 1 trip to the movies or something now. So that's cool. You can go to the movies once. But do consider going by there. Just let them know your schedule, and maybe there's somebody that could use your notes. So that would be cool. Okay, we'll talk about this is for later. This is the elements of that wetland characterization that we talked about, but we'll hold on to that for later. And yeah, we'll hold on to this too until we do the first time. And then this is just this statement that says, "Yep, I read the syllabus," so that nobody comes up to me in week 7 and goes, "Why are we blank, 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 blank?" So it's in the syllabus, even though it might be updated, right? But it's still all in the syllabus. So I used to have you guys sign these and turn these in. They just sit on my desk, and I'd never do anything with them. So I figured, we're going to try doing it electronic now. So you guys do it, and that's just my proof that you guys indeed did look over stuff. Okay, awesome. Let's start talking about restoration, but you guys need a stretch. So let's take a 10-minute break and come back in 10 minutes, and we'll talk about a little bit of introduction to restoration ecology.